We were advised that while the male was behaving erratically, that he entered the water and did not resurface.
Lady Bird Lake. It's a name once synonymous with a beautiful park named for a former First Lady, but now it's become known for multiple mysterious deaths that have led to people thinking there might be a serial killer roaming the streets of Austin, Texas. I'm going to sit down with a former CIA and FBI agent to find out what type of investigation might be going on behind the scenes as police continue to insist there is no foul play. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Since 2022, at least 14 deaths have been reported at Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas. And clearly, that has led to a lot of conjecture about whether there could be a connection between the deaths and whether that connection is maybe nefarious. To be clear, though, and to be fair, Austin police have said that there is no proof that there is a serial killer afoot. Rather, police investigations have consistently found that most of these deaths were accidental and that they share a combination of alcohol and easy access points to Lady Bird Lake. But could it really just be coincidence that more than a dozen people have died in basically the same area, similar circumstances? Now, to get into that, I have to give you some background about what we're talking about. So Lady Bird Lake, if you don't know, it's named after a former First Lady, Lady Bird Johnson, and it's about a half-hour's walk from a very popular neighborhood called Rainey Street. It's a trendy area. There's bars, there's restaurants. A lot of people go out at night, so you can imagine a lot of people are drinking as well. Now, in April of 2023, Austin police put out this statement, saying in part, quote, "While each incident has occurred at the lake, the circumstances, exact locations, and demographics surrounding these cases vary. We work closely with the Travis County Medical Examiner's Office, which conducts a parallel investigation into these deaths. The medical examiner performs autopsies in each of these types of death investigations. The results of these autopsies have not revealed any trauma to the bodies nor indication of foul play." Now, all of the people that were found dead in that area have been men, except for one woman that was found dead in February of this year. Now, there's a lot that we want to get into. So to talk more about this, I have a very special guest, not on Zoom, not on our system here, but in studio with me. Actually, the first time that I have ever met her in person. This is a big honor for me. I am joined by former CIA and FBI agent, News Nation contributor Tracy Walder is here in studio with us. Tracy, so good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Jesse. It's an honor to meet you in person finally.
It's not that much of an honor. It's not. It's more of a letdown. I get it, but it is great to see you. It's great to have you. And one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on, truth be told, we were going to have Tracy on no matter what. We were going to figure out a topic, but this is something that you have been following since the very beginning, right?
Yes, it's something, well, first of all, I live in Texas, and so I don't live in Austin, but it has made the news, obviously, in Texas. But I've actually been following it before that. I've been following it since we kind of saw these cluster deaths in Chicago and some other places as well, and I just found it interesting and almost non-coincidental that this many people have shown up dead within a very short span of time.
We're going to get into it, but the way it would work is it's a dangerous area in the sense that people are drinking, they go, they drown. Everything seems a little weird, and I don't blame people for kind of having a second look at it. What to you raises the most concern about this? Does it make sense? Have you seen something in the past where you have another maybe populated area or area near bars and restaurants where something like this happens, or is this almost unprecedented in a way?
We saw something similar to this and are still seeing something similar to this in Chicago as well. And so I don't necessarily find that coincidental. I think I've gotten to know you. I'm not someone who believes in conspiracy theories and those kinds of things. I really do believe in the work that the police do. But I think in this case, we're jumping to conclusions in terms of we're looking at each of them as individuals and not as the case as a whole. And that can become problematic. Some of these individuals who have passed away didn't even have proper autopsies done on them, just visual autopsies that were done. And so if you're not doing those full autopsies, you don't necessarily know what the cause of death is.
By the way, as you can see, the content that we cover here on Sidebar shows just the world is not a safe place, whether it's foul play or just protecting yourself. When you think about that, the place that you need to protect the most is your home, right? But here's the thing. Apparently, home title fraud is just rampant right now. Yeah, I met with the people over at Home Title Lock, our incredible partner and sponsor. I'm not going to lie to you, they freaked me out. This is an example of a fraudulent quitclaim deed. Got filled out with my information, forged signature, fake notary seal. Not only could my property just get transferred behind my back, but the scammers, they go after the equity. They take out loans using your home as collateral. They do all this, they disappear, they leave you with a legal and financial nightmare, but that is where Home Title Lock comes in. They give you peace of mind, especially with their triple lock protection, because that gets you 24/7 monitoring, alerts of any changes, and restoration services at no out-of-pocket cost to you. So to protect your home, go to HometitleLock.com/sidebar. Use our promo code SIDEBAR. You'll get a 30-day free trial of their triple lock protection and a free title history report to make sure you aren't already a victim. I want to talk about a few of the latest developments or latest deaths reported by Austin Police Department. So back in September, a man's body was found on a trail near the lake, but police said at the time that they were not investigating that death as a homicide.
Austin 911 received a call, a check welfare call in regards to a person the complainant suspected was deceased along the trail in the 2700 block of Canterbury Street. Officers responded and located an obviously deceased individual. In accordance with APD policy, homicide detectives responded and conducted a preliminary investigation, after which the medical examiner's office responded and collected the decedent. The preliminary investigation shows that the decedent had no signs of trauma. There is no suspicion of foul play, and it is not being investigated as a homicide at this time. I would like to add that the body was not retrieved from the water, and there is no indication that the body ever was in the water.
And then, just days later, Austin 911 dispatchers get a call about a man walking down a street, screaming, punching the air before he ends up in the water. And then firefighters and EMTs, they arrive 5 minutes later, but he's dead.
We had an adult male who is behaving erratically, entered the lake, did not resurface, and was pronounced deceased.
Now again, police don't believe that there's any foul play with either of these situations, but again, you got 2 more deaths. And by the way, Austin police, they even did a news conference to try to dispel the rumors that these deaths are somehow connected.
I spoke to homicide detectives, and there's no serial killer at this time. At least we don't believe there is one.
So they say, Tracy, that there's no serial killer. Is that what they're just telling the public? Or do you think behind the scenes they're like, we got to find out if there's a serial killer?
I think it could be a little bit of both, right? I've been in a position before in law enforcement where I'm not necessarily feeding the public incorrect information. I just don't want to create a perception of public panic. There's a lot going on here. In this area, you've got University of Texas, which is obviously a massive, massive school. You've got individuals from University of Texas who feed into Rainey Street and the bars and the restaurants that are in there. It has a really robust nightlife. So at the same time, you don't want to sort of scare people, right, from pumping money into that economy. I'm not saying they're doing that on purpose and they have an ulterior motive for that, but I think they sort of want people to create a sense of calm rather than a sense of panic.
Did they ever say, hey, listen, we looked at this as maybe foul play. We looked at this as maybe it was all connected. We looked at this, whether it's a possible serial killer. We took those steps and nothing came back. Or is it like you said, they're just looking at each one and saying, no, that's accidental. No, that's drowning. This is no foul play. And they haven't done that kind of wide scope analysis.
I don't believe that I have seen Austin police nor Chicago police really say that they have actually talked to each other. Now, again, if there's an ongoing investigation, they're not going to tell us that, right? We're not privy to that information. And maybe there is, I don't know that. But they have never come out and said that we are examining all of these together to try to find out if they are connected. In fact, some of them you can't even get the autopsy results for.
Why wouldn't they just station a couple of officers there at night for the next 2 months and just see if they notice anything?
So they did have officers around Lady Bird Lake on bicycles. They had bicycle officers there for a while. The city has said they're going to install lighting, cameras, those kinds of things around Lady Bird Lake. Some have been installed, some haven't. I don't know if that's necessarily a deterrent. I think they probably need a heavier police presence, but at the same time, Austin is a pretty big city and their resources may be thin.
Yeah, let me highlight another example of something weird here. So we've reported about this before on Sidebar, but this is the death of 30-year-old Jason John, and this happened in the middle of the night on February 5th, 2023. He reportedly had been walking along the hiking and biking trail when he apparently falls into the water, and Jason was also reportedly vomiting by that lake too before he apparently fell in. And it was also reported that a homeless man saw this happen, and when he couldn't get Jason or help Jason to get out of the water, he rushed to the embankment to a Holiday Inn hotel to call 911.
Hi, yes. I had a man just walk in here saying that somebody just fell in the river. He's drenched. I guess he tried to save the person, and I'm in the hotel, Holiday Inn Town Lake. Do you want to listen? Address? At 620 North. IH35.
Okay, this is the Holiday Inn Town Lake?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, where will the patient be located inside the Town Lake? That's inside the Holiday Inn?
Right in the lobby. He says that there's somebody in the river right now. The guy that's in front of me was trying to save him. So the guy that needs to be saved, I have no clue.
Okay, can we talk to the guy that jumped in the river?
Yes, hold on a second.
Yes. Please. My name is Chris Williams.
Okay, Chris, tell me exactly what happened.
I'm on the lake trail, on the north side of Town Lake, walking down the trail. There was a young man up there about 100 yards in front of me, puking and stumbling around and puking. Had trouble to breathe. He went around in a circle. He went in the tree and sit there and said, "Man, just stay there, be calm, I'm coming, nothing to worry about, it's cool, I'm coming, just be still and breathe." And then as he went towards the lake in the darkness, I couldn't see exactly. And the next thing I hear is I'm walking, trying to get close to him. I hear a splash in the water, and I look over and I see the splashing. I'm about 50 yards away from, maybe 40 yards away from him. I said, "Man, swim towards my boat." And then he was dead in the water. And I knew.
Still in the lake?
Yes. I finally got to him with a long stick because I didn't want to get dragged down. But I got 6 feet away from him. His head went down from maybe 10 feet at the most. When his head went down, my stick was at least 5, 6 feet long. I went right over top of where he was. And then as I got closer, I swept that stick around about 3 or 4 feet deep, thinking he was still about that level. I got right over top of where I believed he was. I slipped around in a circle with a stick, and then finally I tried to go as deep as I could, going in expanding circles, and I couldn't feel him. I figured he'd only been down 30 seconds or so. If he felt my stick, he would have grabbed it. Okay. Yes. I swam. I stayed in the water for about a minute trying to feel around and find him. I couldn't find him.
What was he wearing?
I couldn't tell. It looked like a light colored shirt and maybe some shorts or jeans. I couldn't tell from a distance. It was dark down there. All I know is he was vomiting profusely and struggling to walk, stand up.
Did he fall into the water, or did you see him jump into the water? Could you tell?
I did not see him fall, but I was within 50 yards at tops. But it's wooded, so to me, it looked like he was stumbling around trying to keep his balance, and he was moving pretty quickly back and forth.
Okay.
If he was heading towards the bank, where it slopes down a little bit, and he was stumbling pretty fast, he may have landed 5 or 10 feet out into the water.
Okay.
By the time I got to the bank, he was a good 30 feet out.
Okay.
Now, a water rescue crew searched that night. They didn't find anything, and Jason was reported missing later that morning. And ultimately, his body was found in Lady Bird Lake several days later. An autopsy was done. The medical examiner concluded that John drowned. The manner of death was ruled accidental. In fact, according to Austin news outlet KXAM, Jason had no significant internal injuries or external injuries. There was no fractures. There was no trauma. Is that an example, Tracy, of something that you say might be a little questionable?
Just because there's no examples of trauma, right, that are visible or seen on x-rays and, an autopsy doesn't mean that there isn't foul play. Obviously, I'd want to understand what the toxicology reports say. Clearly he could have been extremely intoxicated, but you have to think about it. You mentioned before that it's about 30 minutes it's about a 30-minute walk, right, from Rainey Street to this embankment where they would ultimately go into Lady Bird Lake. Someone probably would have seen something between that period of time. Also, he would have had to be coherent enough to get that 30-minute walk. And so I think that in and of itself is questionable. And I have to wonder, are there drugs involved? Are these drinks being spiked? I don't know. Obviously, this is all alleged, but it just doesn't explain how they got from one place to another.
There are people who believe and have said that these bodies were transported there after the fact, that they were left there after the fact. Do you think there's anything to that?
So people will probably be mad at me for this. I don't believe that they were transported there. That's not something that I personally believe, simply because what you had mentioned before, the homeless person who had said that he saw him very much alive, right, vomiting into the lake area. Most of the accounts that we have seen where there have been witnesses or have been phone calls have been individuals who seem to have made it to the lake on their own free will. I don't know if they were going there to meet someone or what they were doing. I don't feel that they were transported. Now, maybe they were transported there on their own free will by an Uber, but I don't think that they were, I guess, kidnapped and transferred there.
Let's talk about April 2023, because that is when Christopher Hayes Clark's body was pulled from the lake. He actually had interactions with police earlier in the day, and that was actually recorded on the officer's body cams.
Hey, Christopher? Christopher? Hey, Christopher.
What?
You okay, man? Do you need EMS?
Nah.
You need money?
Yeah.
Well, Christopher, I'm here to tell you, man, you can't go back to Golden Chick. You have a criminal trespass notice there. And if you come in here there, we're going to have to arrest you.
I'm at the bus stop.
I know you're at the bus stop. You can't be at the bus stop. If you're next to the Golden Chick, they have a criminal trespass on you. So if you go back there, you'll be arrested. Do you understand that?
I'm at the bus stop.
All right, I'm just talking to you. You're okay? No EMS needed?
No.
All right, you have a good day, okay?
Yeah.
You dealt with him before? We'll be getting more calls on it later.
Hayes Clark's body was found 5 days after that body camera footage was recorded, and while it appears he may have drowned, authorities determined that there was no foul play, there was no suspicious circumstances, but I believe at the time of this recording, they might not have officially released the cause of death yet. Tracy, I don't know if you saw something different, but again, just another eerie one, particularly because he's on camera, like right before his death.
I have not seen a cause of death for him yet as well, same as you, which I think that's troubling to me, right? Typically, in a situation like this, even with toxicology, we would get that back within 2 to 3 weeks, right? And so we should have that by now. And part of me wonders if they're purposely withholding. Again, I don't believe in conspiracies, but part of me wonders if they're purposely withholding that information.
For a good reason.
Right. I don't know if they're investigating more. I don't know if this was a murder and they have a suspect. I don't know the answer to that question. However, 5 days later, his body is found, and we don't have any information about him being missing from friends and people that were with him that night. And I thought that that was really interesting.
Do you know who also has a little bit of an issue with that? So Anjanette Levy, she's the host of Crime Fix. She interviewed Hayes Clark's longtime partner.
Yes.
Her name is Regan Parcio, and she's the mother of his child. And I want you to listen to what she said.
I know for a fact that Chris didn't put himself in that water. And despite them trying to blame it on his drug usage, I've known Chris since I was a kid. We met when we were teenagers. He started using drugs like when my son was 2. My son's now 13. I've seen him at his worst, and he is well aware of what he's doing, and he's not, like, he's very, very active outside. Like, he did Boy Scouts, camping, like, he can survive outside. So I, in my mind, don't think that it was because of drugs or he was so, drugged out. I think something actually happened to him.
So Tracy, she seems to believe that there's something more here, that police haven't been very transparent with the information. And she even said maybe it's time for the FBI to get involved. So what do you make of that reaction? And also the idea of, would the FBI get involved in something like this?
So yes and no, we've talked about that before in terms of jurisdiction and cases and all of that. Obviously, if it's a local issue, the FBI doesn't get involved unless they're invited, right? That they have to be invited in. And typically they're not invited in sort of an investigative role. They're typically there to provide resources, right? Go through phone data, digital resources, forensics, those kinds of things. I do not believe that at this point that the FBI has been invited, right, by Austin police. I think the FBI would be beneficial in this instance simply because we have seen this in other states. And then that becomes obviously a federal issue. And so I think it would be very helpful to have them coordinate that information.
But are you suggesting FBI getting involved because there's a connection between this and like Chicago, or are you saying there's a problem overall that we have, the FBI has to look at? Like, in other words, am I saying if we really is a serial killer, are we talking about somebody who's operating in the Lady Bird Lake area and also Chicago, or is it there's a bigger problem going on that we need to address? What are we talking about?
When you say a bigger problem going on, do you mean things aren't being investigated properly?
Yeah. Like maybe the FBI is looking at local jurisdictions, local police jurisdictions, saying there's a lack of investigative, thoroughness, or is it we think that there's a suspect or series of suspects who are operating across different jurisdictions?
I think it's the latter. I think it's
really.
Yes.
Wow.
And I've talked about this with other law enforcement officers just to, I guess, make sure I'm not crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I wouldn't call you. You don't traffic in conspiracy theories.
It's different, right? It would be very different than what we've seen with serial killers. Serial killers typically operate, I'd say for the most part, on their own, really. That's kind of how they thrive. This would be a network, right, that we would be talking about, which is super unusual and really not something we've ever seen before. But I don't want to say it's outside of the realm of possibility.
What makes you think it could be a network? What makes you think it's connected? Is there a similarity in victims and circumstances? What are you talking about?
Again, I keep going back to Chicago because that's the most similar. We've seen other clusters in other states, but that's the most.
What's happening in Chicago?
The same thing. And so basically what's happening there is it's individuals that match really very similar descriptions, quite frankly, to the folks in Lady Bird Lake, had been frequenting, the nightlife scene, right? And then wind up in the rivers there at times that don't necessarily make sense. And obviously you couldn't necessarily have one person doing that back and forth, right, across state lines. It seems to me like you would need multiple. But one of the things that I saw just in researching this case is when there was a lull in deaths in Lady Bird Lake, there was a spike in Chicago.
Really?
And I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, that is eerie. That is eerie. And look, talking about foul play, there was foul play at one point because Austin police did say that only one of the Lady Bird Lake cases actually involved a clear case of foul play. So this is in 2022. 45-year-old Josue Moreno was shot in the head while driving his car, and that car crashed through a guardrail into the lake, but police arrested their suspect, Joel Gonzalez Pavan, for this murder. And earlier this year, after he pled guilty, he was sentenced to 35 years in prison. So that's a clear-cut case of foul play. Now, as Tracy said, the city has tried to take some corrective action here. We talked about stationing officers, but as Tracy said, the city announced plans for better lighting, fencing, dedicating, I think, $1 million to improve that trail. And over the summer, the city also launched a Sip Safely program, which was designed to raise awareness about the potential of drink spiking in the entertainment industry, in entertainment district, I should say, which again is a possibility of what might be happening here. And the Austin Travis County Emergency Medical Services, they also piloted a program where they put a couple of medics near Rainey Street to not only help people who might need them, but also to monitor the trail as well. So Tracy, with all that in mind, what else would you like to know? If you were an investigative agent overseeing this, you now go to the Austin Police Department, what do you want to see? What do you want to know?
Those autopsy reports. I mean, to me, that's number one, right? I get it. We're all not entitled to everyone's, private autopsy information. But I think the families, quite frankly, have spoken out and said that they want those autopsy reports. Why have they held on to them for so long? Why have they not been released to the families? These families want a cause of death. They deserve closure, in my opinion, to that. And I think the public, in my opinion, deserves to know if there is a public safety issue. They deserve to know what that issue is and what can be done to combat it.
What would it take for there to be a change?
In my opinion, I think it would take, I don't want to come down too hard on Austin PD because I'm former law enforcement myself, and I get it. It's a tough and thankless job most of the time. But I think it would take them to stop looking at these as individual deaths, in my opinion, and start looking at how all of these are connected.
Look, I think this is a very fair, sober analysis of what's going on here. One of the reasons I love having you on is, again, you look at the facts, you look at the circumstances, you don't traffic in conspiracy theories. But what I will also say is there is something strange going on, and I can understand the public and the family and friends of these victims who have frustration about what's happening here. I mean, on one hand, it could very well all be cases of accidents and tragedies that are resulting, but with now 2 more deaths in September, I hope it's not the situation where it's just going to take more people to wind up dead for something to happen, but it's just a really eerie situation. Tracy Walder, great seeing you. You can check out The Unexpected Spy. It's a great book. You can check it out from Tracy. She'll be on News Nation, I'm sure, later today, and you can see her all the time here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for coming on, Tracy. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us, and as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.